As early as I can remember, the concept of timelines or timeline alteration has been around in anime since the early 90s, around the time where the Android Saga and Dragon Ball Z first aired. And no, when I say as early as I can remember, that doesn't actually mean I was born around that time. It's just the anime that taught me how timelines truly work. So I guess you could say this might turn into one of those few videos where I constantly reference another anime to help with my explanation. I don't even know. But what I do know is if you push that like button right now, it'll help push this video extremely in the YouTube algorithm. You guys honestly been really helping me out with the likes lately, so I don't necessarily want to put a like goal on this video every time you guys just demolish it. So I'll just let you guys do your thing and see what happens. Now let's hop into the video. If you think about it, future Trunks coming back to the present to tell Goku and others about the androids that were set to arrive in the near future is kinda the same as KASHIN KOJI telling Boruto about the SHINJU. Both major enemies that threaten the very well-being of the Earth, and they both cause the main characters to go through heavy training arcs. Now, one of the most prolific rules about timelines is just telling someone about the future, or possible futures in Boruto's case, can alter the future greatly. As soon as Trunks told the Z fighters about the androids, he already changed the future for the better. He caused everyone to train and eventually be way better prepared for the arrival of the androids. The only fate that couldn't be changed no matter what he did was Goku catching his heart virus. But as we all know, it was counteracted because of the medicine that Trunks gave him. So this tells you not everything that occurs in the future can be altered. Some things are locked in to happen whether you like it or not. So I guess you could say just telling them about the future wasn't going to be enough in that case. But in most cases, it would be. So if I didn't explain it already, Trunks didn't actually change his future when he went to the past. All he did was create a separate timeline apart from his own that still had Goku and the other Z fighters still alive. Future Trunks' future was still the same. So by this logic, this is where I was wondering if there was a possible future where KASHIN KOJI didn't actually tell Boruto about the upcoming looming threat of the SHINJU, and what would that future even look like? Better yet, let's go over all the other timelines that Koji revealed to Boruto to see how differently the series could have been as a whole. So of course, I feel like we should start off with the most known timeline alteration. Kawaki kills Boruto and Sarada on the day that Naruto vanished. This one was a little foreshadowed because if we look back to about chapter 75 of part 1, we can see near the end of the chapter, Boruto starts getting visions of the future due to sharing a body with Momoshiki. And one of the visions entails Kawaki with Karma V2 active, standing over Boruto with blood on his face. Now, many people had thought this was just an honest mistake by Ikimoto or something, because unlike every other vision he's seen throughout those few panels, the Kawaki one just never happened. As a matter of fact, Kawaki wasn't even in his V2 state. We didn't officially know whether that was a mistake or not until Koji confirmed that in one of the timelines, Boruto could have potentially died in that moment. Now, what was the exact moment that the timeline was changed? That information is still unknown. I could come up with theories, but the catalyst for the timeline to change could honestly go back 10 or even 20 chapters if we're being realistic. But if I had to guess from the chapter alone, I would say the timeline changed around the time Sasuke and the others stepped in to help Boruto and Sarada. Since Koji stated that only Sarada and Boruto died in this scenario, it's very likely that in that separate timeline, nobody assisted them in their fight against Kawaki. I believe if someone like Mitsuki or Sasuke died while trying to stop Kawaki as well, Koji just wouldn't fail to mention such an important detail. So most likely everything would go how it happened in the manga, except Sasuke and the others stepping in to help. And this change would prove crucial because after Sarada steps in to try and stop the fight, this is when Kawaki could have entered his V2 state and destroyed the both of them with relative ease, I might add. And like I said before, the main reason why the others didn't show up to help in this timeline could go back several chapters prior. Timelines work in very mysterious ways. We don't know the exact event that set up this future. So moving along, when eventually Kawaki does kill Boruto and Sarada, omnipotence never occurs because Boruto is already taken care of, and Kawaki probably isn't immediately chased out of the village since the others didn't arrive to detain him. Now later on is when the issue occurs, because afterwards Kawaki loses the code who proves to have overwhelming power and gets devoured by the Ten Tails and causes the destruction of the planet. So in this timeline, Code ultimately wins. Without Boruto, there wasn't anyone in the village that could have stood up to Code and his Claw Grime army, which also confirmed that at the beginning of 2 Blue Vortex, Code was indeed miles ahead of Kawaki in terms of raw strength. But there's also another possibility. Code could have came for Kawaki a little bit sooner than his eventual assault on Konoha in chapter 1. He actually could have went and found Kawaki instead of Boruto and Sasuke in this timeline. And that's when he defeated Kawaki. That's always a possibility too. So Code eats the chakra fruit of Earth and finally becomes the new Otsutsuki, probably the strongest or second strongest Otsutsuki next to Shibai if we're being honest. Like, this isn't some regular chakra fruit from a distant planet with little to no life. This chakra fruit will be sprouted from Earth, and the chakra fruit is supposed to carry the genetic information of all life on that planet, present and past life I might add. A planet that's billions of years old and who inherited the strongest shinobi of all time and all of the tailed beasts. So I don't think it's a stretch to say he'd be so powerful he'd probably be comparable to Shibai at the very least. So even if the threat of the Shinju should occur, and by the way it shouldn't because the 10 tails would become a literal divine tree, but for fun, let's just say the Shinju still emerge for some odd reason, Code would just demolish all of them with no difficulty. After Code eats the chakra fruit from Earth, he would travel to different planets and keep devouring those planets one after another until he ascends to the 4th dimension and becomes a god like Shibai. Now I ain't gonna lie, there is a lot of problems with this timeline that I just can't leave alone. Like after Kawaki kills Boruto and Sarada, does nobody try to look for Kawaki? The person that supposedly killed the Hokage, his son, and daughter of Sasuke Uchiha? Since Kawaki would most likely have to go rogue from the village after he committed this heinous crime, would nobody want revenge? I mean, if they found out that he did it. Especially in Sasuke's case. The boy killed your daughter, your student, and best friend all in one day. I mean, yeah, Sasuke could have been on Kawaki's tail for sure. Actually, a lot could have happened in that timeline, we just don't know because it wasn't specified, but I'm about 85% sure it went exactly how I said. So maybe Kawaki uses Sukuna Hikona to repeatedly shrink himself to keep himself well hidden from any Konoha shinobi pursuing him, as well as Sasuke. And eventually, like I said earlier, about a year into his rogue life, he could have ran into Code, very similar to how Boruto and Sasuke ran into Code, and that literally would have been the end of Kawaki. Everything lines up with each other and makes perfect sense. Now, of course, that's not the only alternate timeline that KOJI done mentioned. Okay, so this alternate timeline deals with Naruto being killed by Ishiki, and he is reborn in Kawaki's body, and then the planet is destroyed by the divine tree that he planted. Now, this timeline is more straightforward than the last one, because I think everything occurs how it originally did, but the only crucial thing that happened, or I should say that didn't happen, is Kawaki learning how to perform the Shadow Clone Jutsu from Naruto. So everything probably occurs how it did originally, but where the timeline is altered goes all the way back to chapter 34 when Kawaki asks Naruto for training. Something happens to where Kawaki either didn't ask to be trained in the art of ninjutsu, or Kawaki doesn't master the jutsu fast enough to use properly in battle. In the original timeline, Kawaki states that he's still pretty bad at the technique. He can just barely manage to make one clone. So it's not like in one timeline he completely mastered the technique, and another he's just a dunce. No, the line between him being able to make a clone and not is very thin. So anything could have caused him to lose that little bit of progression he could have made to be able to make that one clone. So back on track, since he doesn't make that progression on his training with the Shadow Clone technique, he fails to fake out Ishiki in his last minute of life and gets implanted with another Karma Seal. After this, Ishiki most likely finishes off Naruto as he feels his Baryon mode is a bother to handle and comes to the conclusion that it's better to just kill him while he has the chance. Since Ishiki is now in Kawaki's body, he can easily use Boruto's body and feed him to the 10 tails, with little Momoshiki can do about it. In this timeline, it's basically the same as the other one, but instead of Code becoming the next Shibai like God, it's gonna be Ishiki that fulfills that destiny. Either way, Earth is pretty much doomed. Believe it or not, KASHIN KOJI isn't the only one that altered the future by giving out certain key information on the future. During Boruto's interrogation, he gave out vital information about the Shinju that he learned from KOJI. He even told Konohamaru that he was being targeted by one of the Shinju. This could have easily created another timeline, a timeline where Konohamaru survives the Shinju attack because of him knowing he's being targeted. or prevent him from doing something that'll put himself in danger. Or it could help Konoha better prepare for any future invasions from the Shinju. But what I would really like to focus on here is in chapter 15 when Boruto told Kawaki about how much of a threat the Shinju are and what would eventually happen to the planet if he doesn't get stronger. This is probably the easiest future to analyze, so I won't spend too much time on it, since Koji told Boruto that in many of the futures that he foresaw, the one who would be eventually devoured and cause the planet to die would be Kawaki. This is exactly why he told Kawaki that he needs more power before they fight against the Shinju. And since simple training isn't an option anymore, he told him to go to Amato to get his limiters removed. And as you guys know from earlier in the video, by telling someone information, you can create a separate timeline. And in this timeline that Boruto just created, he probably created the Kawaki that we see at the end of Two Blue Vortex. A stronger, way more dangerous Kawaki who unlocked his full potential. So by doing this, he actively prevented Kawaki getting devoured and prolonged the planet's survival. But in the long run, he made Kawaki reaching his goal of killing Boruto way easier. So it's not nothing we have to worry about right now, but later on, Boruto is definitely gonna have his hands full. So based off some of this information, what would really happen if somehow Koji wasn't able to tell Boruto all this information? Well, if Koji wasn't able to tell Boruto this, most likely he wouldn't be as strong as he is right now. The whole reason for Boruto to go through that training was to accelerate his development. Koji taught him all the moves and techniques he would have learned in the future to eventually make Boruto even stronger when it's time to actually have that power. So let's put it in video game logic. If Boruto was level 50 when he's 25 years old, but you need to be at least level 50 right now to deal with the Shinju, Koji would train Boruto till he's level 50 when he's 15 years old instead of 25. So by the time he turns 25, instead of level 50, he might be level 150 for all we know. So going back to Dragon Ball Z, the Boruto in this current timeline would be the Gohan that we all know and love. He went in the hyperbolic time chamber with his father to get stronger to fight against Cell. And by doing that, he was able to gain much more power earlier than he would have in the original timeline. So let's say if Koji didn't tell Boruto about the Shinju, that would create a timeline where Boruto is much weaker. So we'll call this Boruto Future Gohan. A timeline where he wasn't prepared for the upcoming threat of the androids, so eventually everything went up in ruin. That's how it would have been for Boruto. So if Koji didn't tell Boruto about the Shinju, it's very probable that Boruto, along with everyone else, wouldn't even see the Shinju because Boruto would be defeated by Code and fed to the Ten Tails. And yes, you guessed it, leading to the ending where Code wins and becomes the ultimate Otsutsuki. If Boruto wasn't able to do anything in the battle against Code 2 years prior to the start of Two Blue Vortex, odds are is that he wouldn't be able to make the necessary growth in such short time without Koji to lap Code in strength. So without that power, or in other words, the Uzuhiko or Flying RAIJIN, I don't see a way for Boruto to actually come out of that fight victorious. But if they somehow escape Code with their lives, Boruto along with the others are just killed by the Shinju. I also wanted to talk about when Koji told Boruto that he'll be killed by Jiraiya, but this one isn't as clear as the others, and honestly could happen at any time. If he was supposed to die by Jiraiya in chapter 12 but didn't, he could easily be killed by Jiraiya another time. That could have just not been Boruto's time to go. Or Koji could have been talking about another time when Boruto was supposed to die by Jiraiya's hand. But by Koji telling Boruto this, it will probably trigger an event that prevents this as a whole. Or more like we already know it was prevented. But we don't know when and how. That's just something we're gonna have to find out way ahead in the future of Two Blue Vortex. So anyway, that's all the current timelines that have been revealed in Boruto, as well as some hypotheticals that I threw in there just to bring up some interesting conversation. If you agree with my explanation, drop a like, and if you don't, tell me if I missed anything, or maybe there was something I could have done better with explaining, or maybe I completely missed some key information that could have helped my case way more. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to drop a like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you know when I upload or even go live for chapter spoilers. And until my next one, I'll see y'all boys and girls in my next video. And I'm out. Peace.